Hi, I'm Corey. Welcome to Creating with Scraps. This is going to be video 2 in the One Sheet Wonder series. And as I created them randomly and included them in my journal or my book randomly, sometimes they'll be photo centered and sometimes they'll be ephemera and bits and pieces centered. This particular one happens to be more photo centered, and this is the one we're going to make today. And let's see here. It should be fairly quick and fairly straightforward, so we will get started. It has got a pocket in the front, a tuck pocket in the front. Opens up. I used a magnetic closure on this one, though you can certainly use Velcro. It has got a pocket on the inside. It's got a belly band on the top flap. And then these fold down, and these panels were designed to house photos. Now I put a belly band on this inside right flap, but actually if you choose to use a belly band, it can go anywhere, completely up to you. Now I'm going to make one alteration to the one we're making today, and the sample that I have that's slightly different than this one. You can see that, well, the belly band, that location isn't important, but you can see here I folded the inside flaps on both, and then I lifted it up to close. And the magnet is on the front right panel and the front left panel, and they hold great. But when you flip this, you can see that they're not, I'll move it down a little bit, they're not held closed together. So when I made the sample that we're using today, I folded it a little bit differently so that it folds, and this one won't work that way because of how I trimmed it. But I made it so that it folds this way, so the side is closed and the magnet, well, the magnet will still hold this way because I used a strong magnet. But it just slightly different so that you get a close here rather than what I had done originally, and you get an open bit there. All right, so let's get started. I did not complete the 12 by 12 loose sample like I did with the last video, but I intend to, and I'll show you that in a bit. All right, here it is in just brown craft cardstock. And again, I'm not going to ink the sample that the one we make together today, but I inked this one. Pocket in the front, open it up, pocket in the side. Now the one I showed you originally, I had used scrap bits and made my pocket tuck a little bit deeper. You can do that or not if you want, but this one uses just the one sheet of 12 by 12 paper. And then again, fold down, and I put the belly band on this panel on this one, the large belly band, and then there's a small belly band that acts as the closure piece. It holds the closure together, and it also acts as a belly band here. And then you open it up, and there are the panels. And you can see what I mean. Like this one I designed specifically to include photos. And these photos, because of this size, I cut to 3 3/4 and 3 3/4 and 5 1/4. So that's 4 by 6 photos cut down to 3 3/4 and 3 3/4 and 5 3/4. I had to think there for a minute. And you can see, you know, you can put photos, you know, on each of the panels and have a little bit of an 1/8 inch all the way around reveal. And these are my grandbabies, Breck and Emmerich, and this is last Christmas, so they're big grandbabies now. And then the reason I created the belly band here is so that if you chose to, you could tuck some extra photos in here, right? So you could put an envelope or whatever, so extra photos would go in that way. But of course, if I were going to actually use this, I would not center the belly band here because then it would cover up my sweet Breck's face, and that would be bad. So you can move it side to side. I just happened to center it. Or you could put these in a little envelope and put the little envelope in here and then take it out. You know, and that if this were a gift, that's probably what I would do. I would put several photos in an envelope, put them in, and then the recipient can then choose which photo goes where. Or you could do not do the belly band at all, use that as a wrap around the photos, and you could have panels for 6 photos. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you'd have spots for 6 photos. So that's essentially what we're doing today. Oh, and I didn't show you on the back of this, there is also a pocket. There's one more tuck pocket in the back. So it's got 1, 2 pockets on the outside, 3 pockets, and 2 belly bands. So plenty of space. If you were wanting to turn this into more of a journaling type thing, you could certainly do that. You know, you could use your scrap paper, and all of these could be, you know, You could do corner tucks, you could do top things, you could do whatever you wanted. You could decorate them further because there's enough room, extra room to do that. All right, so let's do it. Starting with, let's see, what did I do with the directions? Oh, here we go. Just wanted to make sure that I didn't leave out a step. So there are my directions. And I got to remember at the end, somebody had asked me a question about this, so I've got to remember to do that. All right, step number one, and this one's a pretty quick one. Step number one is to cut 1 inch off the top or the bottom. It doesn't really matter. If you're using directional paper, this is non-directional, it's solid, so it doesn't really matter where I cut it because it's 12 by 12. But if you're using directional paper, you want to make sure that you cut it off the top or the bottom. So I'm going to cut it down to 11 inches by 12 inches. And I do that fairly frequently, largely because these are 5.5 inch tall one sheet wonders. And also because that extra piece of paper comes in really handy, that extra 1 by 12 strip. So cut 1 inch off of that. On the 11 inch side, so I've got my 11 inch sheet loaded, or my 11 inch length loaded, right? I am going to score it at 5.5. So when I turn this the correct way, my height will be 5.5. So I'm going to score it at 5.5 with the 11 inch length in there. All right. And then I'm going to turn it 90 degrees. And so my 12 inch width, I guess is a better way to put it. The 12 inch width is loaded. And I'm going to score it at 4 inches and 8 inches. And that's all I need my large scoreboard for. So I'm going to make that go away. Excuse me a moment. Then I'm going to trim. Now somebody had asked me in the last video, they said it would be more clear if I numbered the panels, so I'll do that. I'll go panel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I apologize if you can hear that car alarm, but somebody outside's car alarm is going off. Okay, so panel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I apologize for the overhead shadow. There's nothing I can do about it in this room, and this has to be my craft room. So, all right. I'm going to cut out panel number 4 completely. So I'm going to use the 5.5 inch mark and the 4 inch mark to cut it out completely. On my directions and on the sample, I've marked where some of them need to be a little bit narrower and some need to be a little bit longer. And I mean marginally, fractionally, like at about a 1/16 of an inch kind. But here I'm just going to score just to the outside edge of my score line. My 4 inch score line, I am going to marginally go out of that because I want to take this whole bit out and cut just outside that and just to the center at 5.5. And then I'm going to turn it sideways and I'm going to cut off that panel completely. Now again, I don't want to cut it directly inside that score line. I want to cut it just a smidge above that score line. So into panel 1, I mean in just a tiny, tiny bit. And I'm going to remove panel number 4. All right, and I'll actually leave this marked, panel number 4. So your 12 inch width, 11 inch length should look like this at this point. Panel 4 is completely gone. Now, between panels 3 and 6, I'm going to cut out this center line. I want panel 3 to be as long as possible because when I fold this, this is going to be my front cover. So I am going to cut panel 3 as long as possible. I don't want to cut up into panel 3. And I can cut a little bit into panel 6 because that's going to be a flap over. And when I fold this up, if I cut them exactly at that mark, they will run into each other. It'll make it a little bulky. So I'm going to cut, what I call it is cut panel 6 short and leave panel 3 long. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to, again, just touch the right above my score mark with my, let's see if I can zoom in and make that a little bit easier if you can see it. So I want to line this up. So where I'm going to cut is just a smidge above the score line and to the panel score line, right? So I'm cutting across there. And now you can see here, I cut inside of it a little bit, and I really don't want to cut inside the score line. I want to cut a little above it, but we're going to call it good for now. But on this one, let's see if I can move this back a little. There you go. I want to cut panel number 6 just a smidge short, so I'm going to move this down. And it's, again, just because the way I'm going to fold it and the way it's going to sit in the book when it's all closed. And again, I'm going to cut that just to the center score line. All right. And then when you're folded this, you can see there's just, I don't know, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, an 1/8 of an inch, something like that, of a little strip left, and I'm going to cut that off. All right. I think that's all we're cutting for that. I'm going to fold panel 6 down to panel 5. Let's zoom back out. Panel 6 is going down to panel 5. Panel 3 is going to stay here, but I'll just to make sure that these are straight. You can see there that my lines are straight. And again, I can tear this off, but I prefer to cut it because it just gives it a cleaner fold. And I'll cut that little bit off. All right. At the end of the day, panel 5 and 6 are going to fold up on top of panel 2. 3 is going to wrap around, and 1 is going to wrap around. All right. And that is why you want to cut a little bit, you want to trim a little bit off. Now you see here on panel 6, right? If I fold this over to panel 5 and I fold it up on top of panel 2, you can see right here, when I close panel 1, this little edge hits. It impedes the fold. So what I'm going to do is open this back up. In panel 6, I am going to trim just, again, a very, very little bit, between an 1/8 and a 1/16 inch off the right edge of panel 6. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you certainly don't have to measure it. And you can see there, I just want to take off a tiny, tiny little bit. And that's what I removed. Because when I'm ready to fold this up and or put photos in it, it's going to not be obstructed when I fold the top piece. All right. And then it'll eventually look like this. And we have one more piece to put on. All right. And that's the cutting of this bit. So I've got panels 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. 5 and 6 meet, fold up to panel 2. Panel 3 is my right flap. Panel 1 is my left flap. That's it. All right, panel 4. Okay. I am going to now make a couple more score marks. And I am going to score panel 1 at 1 inch. From the left edge, panel 1 is going to be scored at the 1 inch mark. And the reason I didn't score this initially when we scored these others is I don't want this score line I didn't want it in my panel 4, which is why I didn't do it, and which is why I'm doing it now. So panel 1, I'm scoring at the 1 inch mark. And panel 4 that has been removed, I am going to score at the 2 inch mark. I'm going to score it in half, basically. And that is it, the scoreboard. All right, now it is essentially assembly. I am going to take my 6x1, and I could have done it initially, I just didn't think of it, but I'm going to cut this in half at 6 inches. No, I'm not on this trimmer, because this trimmer doesn't have a 6 inch mark. Let's go with this. So I'm going to cut this in half at 6 inches, and it doesn't have to be exactly 6 inches, but 6 inches works well. So cut it in half at 6 inches. Let's see, close and close and close. Now, where you scored it at 1 inch on panel 1, you're just going to fold that inside. So you're going to fold it so that it's on the inside edge of the right flap. This is where on the initial book, here I'll show you real quick. This is where I added a bit of lace here, and I added a bit of transparency. These were just scraps from something else, but this is still the 1 inch flap. So if you're wanting to sew something on there or add a little bit extra, this is the place to do it. Folded this in. All right, now let's go over magnets really quickly. I told you in this one I used magnets, and in the sample I've got right here, I used these really thin magnets, and that wasn't the best choice because There is paper between this, and there's a layer of paper between the closure magnet. And it holds. I mean, it holds. But there's nothing in here to stress it out. So it'll hold fine, but there's nothing to test its strength, right? Whereas on this one, I used the basic gray magnets. They're a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger that I got off Amazon. And if I'm using cardstock here, I would recommend that. You can see and hear it's a tighter hold. So if I've got pictures or anything bulky like ephemera or pockets or anything like that, it's going to stress out this magnet and it may or may not hold. But this basic gray magnet, this larger magnet, it will hold. And when you're looking, if you need magnets, I've torn off the labels on this. The basic gray magnets come in, well, they probably come in even more sizes, but the sizes I've got here, I want to say this one is it's probably 5/8, and this one is probably 3/8, if I were to guess. Yeah, they're probably 5/8 and 3/8. And I think on this one I used the 5/8 magnet, and I'm glad I did, because again, if I'm putting anything bulky in here, this would hold a lot tighter. So there you go, learn from my mistake. But for the sample, it works just fine. It holds it closed. Okay, I've folded in my 1 inch on panel 1, and if I was going to put an edge or a border, I would have done that. Then I'll turn this to the side, because remember, this is my left-sided closure. I'm going to turn this to the side, and I am going to put my magnet on the underside of this. Now, I don't worry about the second magnet quite yet, because, you know, obviously magnets have positive and negative, and some people use a washer, so you don't have to worry about it. Again, if I were not using anything bulky, if I were using thinner paper, that would be fine. But if I want it to really hold tight, if I've got some bulk in there, photos, etc., I'd probably want to use 2 sides of the magnet. Okay, so here, these basic gray magnets tell you which is the positive and which is the negative. And, you know, science tells us you want the positive to go to the negative. And they are sticky backed on one side, right? On where these little covers are, they're sticky. So I want to make sure that I am using the positive with the negative. So I'm going to use this, peel off the back, and put it right about the center of my 1 inch flap. See, I haven't glued it down or sewed it in place or anything like that yet. I'm going to open it up and put the sticky side of my magnet right down on the center, just like that. Now, what I generally tend to do here is I'll take just a piece of scrap paper, any scrap paper, and I will glue this down around it. And my reasoning for that is when it's all said and done and I fold this down, I want to be able to tuck, you know, a journaling card, a photo, a message, something in here. And if I don't cover this up, well, then whatever I'm putting in there could get caught on that edge. So most of the time I will take just a little piece of scrap paper, cardstock, what have you, and I'll glue it on the inside. Now that'll hold it in place. Oops, sorry about that. It'll hold it in place, and it'll keep me from catching that edge on something. So that's what I'm going to do here. And again, that's just a little scrap. And I will glue it in place. And I give it, you know, this glue is dry time of pretty much now with art glitter glue. But you do want that to be kind of adhered before you put the rest of the magnet pieces, the other magnet piece in place. So I'd give that a moment to glue. Maybe I'd clamp it because it, you know, it is a little bit bulky. And you can see there, I put the magnet really close to the edge. Probably wasn't my best choice, but there you go. It still will work. I can put glue in there and glue this down. And again, that's just so that it doesn't get caught on any of the other pieces that I choose to include. And I'm going to put a little more glue there. All right, so I've got one of my 2 magnets in place. You could use Velcro. You don't have to use a magnet by any means, but I used Velcro on the last one, so I thought I'd use a magnet on this one. So I've got my first magnet in place, right? And when I fold this over to use as my tuck spot, it will come down like this. So my second magnet needs to match up here. And I used a positive for that. Did I use a negative or a positive? What did I do? Oh, here it is. Here's the other one. And then I'm checking myself because this is going to close like this. So you can see there, use your magnet and put it on to make sure you've got it in the right spot. Because yes, I have done it where I put the magnet in on the wrong spot and then it doesn't close. So you are going to want your magnet to stick like this. All right, so we've got this piece and 2 of these 1x6. What I do with this for my closure is I kind of just fold it over and overlap a little bit. I don't know, maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch. I don't even know. It doesn't matter really. As long as you fold it over enough to not be seen when your front piece is on. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a minute. So I folded this closed, made just a bent loop, I guess, or a loop with creases in it, right? I'm going to want to put this down right here, and I'm going to put the magnet on the underside of this. And I do it this way, folding it first, just to make sure that I get my magnet in my right spot, because if your magnet's off, your cover will close incorrectly. So I do it like this. And when I close this, I want to make sure that that little belly band that I've just made doesn't stick out the edge. Now, I don't know how well you can see it there, but I want to make sure that when I close this up, that little belly band piece doesn't stick out the edge, which is why I do it this way, to check myself. If I needed to, if I didn't fold it right, I could peel this up and make it a little bit smaller and then put it down. All right. Okay, I am going to now there's a couple ways to do this. This is my preference. I know somebody else would tell me, no, Corey, that's a horrible way to do it. I am going to glue this in place in the center. And I've made sure that one, it lines up with the magnet across from it. Remember that my second magnet, the one I'm going to be gluing in here, is on top of the one I've already put in place. I'm going to make sure that it lines up, right? That it goes on top of the band, and that they will meet where I want them to meet. So I may have to adjust it a little bit and move it a little bit. And then I'm going to lay it down. And is it going to work? Yeah, it's going to be, well, you can see there, it's going to be where I want it to be. And that is why I usually glue this down first, because it gives me an idea, or it tells me exactly where I want this magnet to go. Now you could do it like this and line it up and then put it down, and that would work as well, but I have better luck doing it the way I'm doing it. So make it work for you, but I wanted to make sure that one, my magnet will not show, 2, that it'll be centered on my belly band piece, and 3, that it will close straight. So that's my reasoning and my rationale. And I don't put a ton of glue on initially. I just kind of, in case I need to move it, I'll put a little bit of glue on. All right, folding this down and putting this in place. See, I can still move it if I need to. And yep, that's good. That's where I want it. And then I'll glue this down. Push down on it. Now, I know that I want this side of the magnet to be underneath this strip, right? I want it to be right here underneath. So I'm going to have the glued spot, the adhesive or the paper covered sticky spot is going to go up like this underneath here, right? It's going to go right up here underneath here. And I know I can make it go where I want it to because of see, I didn't put a lot of glue on there. I can make sure it's in the right spot because again, I want those pieces to line up. Now, personal preference, you can use a flat knife. This is a Cricut pickup tool. You use what you want. But you can see how it's flat and I can slide it right in there. So I can line these pieces up, right? And I can put it right in there and it goes where I want it to go. And I still have a little bit of wiggle room. See? You can see there. My magnet is where I want it to be. My paper is lined up where I want it to line up. I haven't scored this yet. And I know that my pieces, top and bottom, are going to line up. So the whole thing is going to be centered. You can use you don't have to use a metal piece. I just find it a little bit easier to do it that way. All right. Now I know these pieces are in the right spot and I'll do the same thing. Again, I don't have a lot of glue on here, but I'll take a scrap of paper and because I want to use this belly band and I'll put this strap the scrap of paper underneath to hold this piece in place. Okay. Now, could I have done this with this opened up and folded? Yes, but for me, it's a lot harder to get it exactly where I want it to go. For somebody else, that may be a better choice, but for me, this works. Okay, so I'm going to trim that down. And again, I'm just going to put glue all over this and tuck it up under there, make sure it's nice and tight. I can clamp it or clip it or what have you if I want to, and make sure that it's there. And that way it doesn't, the magnet doesn't catch when I'm taking something in or out. All right, and there is my magnet. Put it down. It's on the underside, so it's not really going to show. And I would just clamp it in place. And you can see right here the outline. Maybe you can see the outline of the magnet. But it's under the inside of the cover, so it's not going to show. Now, I'm the first to say this is not the one and only way to do this. I have the best success of making sure everything lines up. All right, and then it's done like this, and then when I close it, it matches and it folds nicely. Now, I can come back and put the rest of the glue on, right? I can glue the rest of the piece down because I want it to be down and flat, and I know it's in the right spot. And the same thing on the other side. I can put some more glue down and make sure it's adhered. And then I'll give that a minute to dry. All right, there's my closure. Now, the last two steps are this folded over piece that we scored at 2 inches. This is going to go around the front and the back. And you can see here, it's a little bit long, so I'm going to need to trim that down. And that's because we cut just inside and we cut panel 4 just a smidge long. So I'm going to take that off. And glue it just like this. So I'm going to glue top and bottom, right? This is adhered to panel 1 on the front and panel 2 on the back, just in case you're a panel person. So I'm gluing the top and the bottom on panel 1. And yes, I do, because I'm putting this, I guess it depends on how you use it, but I do glue, rather than gluing the whole thing at once, I glue it at the front and then the back. I don't know. Does it make a difference? Probably not, but I find I have a little bit better success. So I've glued this down, top and bottom. And then on the back, I'll do the same thing. Once it's wrapped around, I'll glue just the top and the bottom, and that gives me my pocket at the back. And again, you can do the same thing here. If you were wanting to put, to make this a little bit deeper, or if you were wanting to sew on it or whatever, I would do that prior to gluing it down. Ink, if you're going to ink it, of course, ink it first, just because it's easier. It's not required, but certainly easier. All right, and then those panels, glue those down. And here is your fold. Here is your one sheet winder. All right. Oh, I forgot to do this last step. Glue the top and the bottom of the 1 inch flap on panel 1 down. That's what's gonna give you your side tuck, pocket tuck, what have you. All right. And you can put your belly band right here if you want. So this is a 6 inch piece. This is a 5.5 inch piece. Score 1/4 inch on each side, fold it, score, fold, score, fold. I didn't score it, but score, fold, and then glue it down. And you don't have to have a belly band. You can use this to wrap your photos or something else. But if you were wanting to add a belly band, when I did it originally, I did it on the inside of 3, just because that's where I did it. But on the sample that I gave you guys today, I did it on the bottom of 6, because then the 2 belly bands, the side belly band and the center, or the forward facing belly band, were on the same panels. But that's completely up to you. You could flip it up, and the bottom of panel 5, or the back panel 5, the back side of panel 5 could get your belly band, so that when your book opens up, you've got a belly band here. So you've got a tuck, a belly band, and a blank page for a photo or a note or what have you. So again, where you put the belly band, completely up to you. But that is how you assemble it. And again, when it's all said and done, Panel 6 touches panel 5, flips up to panel 2. Panel 3 is your right-sided closure with your magnetic belly band. Panel 1 is your left-sided closure, and it's got your magnetic piece there. And Bob's your uncle. There you go. That's how that one's done. And that is all for the One Sheet Wonder. Couple quick updates, and we will move on. Somebody had asked, well, a couple somebody's had asked how I assembled this. And while that's certainly not the premise of this series, I will be glad to show you quickly how I did it. This is composed in pieces. I used a heavy-duty chipboard for the back panel and for the front because I wanted this to be really sturdy. I knew I was going to be in and out of it a lot. And the way I did that was, you can see here, you can use pamphlet stitches to sew it in. You can use whatever, the 3, the 5. I sewed it in with my sewing machine because that's my preference. But it doesn't have to be. Pamphlet stitches work just fine. And the way I do this is this. When I'm putting my signatures in, this is just a piece of file folder. And its width is 4.5 inches, and the height is 6.25 inches. I scored them using my disappearing pen at 1/4 inch marks. And then when I was sewing these in, I sewed in, because I wanted to put the plastic sleeves, I sewed in 3 of the plastic sleeve holders, right? These 1.5 inch wide bits. I sewed in 3 of those, just had it opened up, sewed it straight down. I did 3 of these, and then when they were done, when I was done sewing them in, I closed them up. Well, before I closed them up, I put a piece of plastic in here, the photo pages basically, that I'd cut down to the size I wanted, tucked that in there, and then sewed it along the edge. So you can see here, these plastic photo pieces. That's how I created those. And then those are the little pockets for the directions and then the samples. For the actual pages, I put them every 1/4 inch, and I did the same thing. I chose a spot inside the folio, or the One Sheet Wonder fold over thing, and I sewed it straight into, along the seam, into the 1/4 inch marks into the book. So once all of the pieces were sewn in, all of my pieces, then I took this, and I use 1 inch on each side just to glue it down nicely. I put the heavy-duty chipboard behind it, right? So this is my insert with the signatures in it. I put the chipboard behind it. I glued it to the chipboard, and then I just used a back-facing piece. I sewed the edges. I didn't actually sew it to the chipboard. I just sewed the top and then glued it on. And that's the Tim Holtz backboards paper. And so that's it. So the insert goes onto the chipboard, and then the outside cover goes onto the chipboard, and then the chipboard cover is the strength of my base. And that's how those were created. So again, for the size of that I made here, it was 6.25 inches tall, 4.5 inches wide, scored at 1 inch and 3 inch. So these will be glued down to my side panels for strength and motion. And then these strips that I used to put the plastic in are 1.5, scored at 3/4, and then I used 1/4 inch insert lines. And that is how I assembled this. And I know there's a gazillion how to assemble books, but those are the measurements and the dimensions I used. 3 different chipboard pieces, and then all put together using that system that I mentioned. Next, a couple people asked what I was going to do with these, and I'll just throw them inexpensively into my Etsy shop sometime this week, because I've got a couple other things to go in there. So I'll do that, and if somebody wants it, they're more than welcome to purchase it. And the one I'm going to be using with this photo sample booklet is this paper, and I'll put that in the shop when it's ready as well. This is Photo Play, Heart and Home, and then these are the sides of the paper that I will be using. And where is it here? My hands clearly are not working correctly. So these will be the 3 patterns that I use, and then these will be the elements, and I'll show it in the shop. But that's the one I'll be using. I'm trying really hard to show that you can use it with more of a vintage or heritage paper. You can use it with plain cardstock, and you can also use it with some more modern current paper as well. A huge thank you. This is something I struggle with. thank you for a thank you. But so, I've had happy mail since this summer from several people, and I deeply appreciate it. And I don't want people to think that I don't share it on here because I don't want anybody to feel bad about not sending me happy mail, because it's never expected. But Juanita and Wendy and Lisa and SJ and Sue and Deb and Cora, thank you very, very much. You have made my day more than you will ever know. Finally, I've had people ask about this and what I was going to do with these. And so I think what I'll do is I will just toss these into my Etsy shop as well. I have mailed all of the 20,000 subscriber cards out. So thank you for that. It took me a bit to get some addresses from some people, which was the reason for the delay, but they've all been mailed out. So thank you for that. And you should have them. They were mailed late this week, so you should have them hopefully fairly soon. But these, I have got these bookmark belly band journaling spots. I've got a bunch of these, and I'll put these into the shop. And I have no idea how much I'm going to charge for them, but I'll put them in the shop. And these are the ones that I showed in a previous video on how to make them, right? And you can use them as a bookmark with a journaling place, right? Or you can use them as a belly band. They've got place to journal on the back, so you could journal there, and on the drop-down slot, right? You could journal that way, or you could glue this in top and bottom as a belly band and put a larger piece behind you. So you can completely choose. And there are some longer ones and shorter ones, and there are, I don't know, maybe 20-ish of these. So I will load these into my shop too. And I think that's it. I think that was all I wanted to share for now. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you're all doing well and you're enjoying beautiful fall weather or spring weather, depending on where in the world you are. I know several of our friends from UK are honoring the ceremony to celebrate the Queen's life, Her Royal Majesty's life tomorrow. So keep that in mind, and maybe keep them in mind as they as a people and as a country mourn, and the world mourns her loss, because she did many wonderful and good things. Happy creating. Enjoy your season, and thank you for watching.